All right. Hey, guys. We are back. This time we are with Ashley Epping, and Ashley is the art supervisor at the Bloc. And this episode, we talk about her time at Bloc, but mainly and a lot of it about her time at the Clio Awards, which was huge. She was there for a long time and before she moved over to the Bloc. And we talk about all kinds of things. Talk about how she grew up as a classically trained artist and she still paints. We talk about her times at the Clio Awards and how she has seen some of the best ads that were ever made. She tells us about some of her favorite ads and her favorite projects there, including working on the 60th anniversary film where they took the script, I guess, and flipped it on the ad people and put them in front of the camera instead of the celebrities and the models and the actors that they normally do, and asked them questions, which I'm sure was lots of fun because most ad people I know aren't real fond about being in front of the camera. They prefer to be behind it. At least I do. Um, we also talk about a trip she took to Milan where she went there to have meetings for the Clio Awards, ended up her partner for the business partner for that trip ended up having to come back to the US, and she was there by herself and ended up in a meeting in Milan between two advertising legends this towards the end of the podcast. So stick around for that and find out who those two people were. We talk about her new job at the Bloc as the art supervisor and all that entails and all the fun she's having over there. She can't really talk about a lot of the stuff she's doing, but sounds like she's getting to do a lot of really cool things there. And we also discuss how she is a coach or was a coach for the Special Olympics figure skating team. So that in itself is pretty incredible. We'll also give you the website for her artwork, so you can check that out also. This is a really cool episode. I think you guys are going to enjoy it and love it. So let me know what you think. Thumbs up it, like it, share it, follow, all that kind of stuff. And I'll be interested in hearing what all you guys think about it. Here we go. Okay, so I want to know, first of all, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Rochester, New York. So still the state of New York, but a
Okay.
very, very different place.
So was your family artistic? Were you artistic as a kid? How did all that play out? Was it one of these things where mom and dad are scientists and you just, were over drawing stuff, or was it, you came into it later in life, or how did that all work out?
Yeah, I was always artistic because my grandma was a painter.
Uh,
So she watched me along with my mom for many years growing up, and that's what we did. We did crafts, we made things. She's very resourceful, she's very crafty. We were always making. My parents are maybe artistic in their own ways, but do not have any profession in the creative field. So it was all for fun up until high school when I started classically training in painting, and it became more of a serious part of my life, and is what inspired me to go on into a creative field.
so when you went into, so I'm assuming you were already like painting all kinds of stuff before you went to high school.
Yeah.
And what exactly is classical like for high school? Did you go to a regular high school to be classically trained in painting, or did you go to like an art high school?
I went to a public high school that had an incredible art department. So I got
Oh,
really lucky. I had a mentor there, Todd Stahl, who kind of took me under his wing and showed me how art can help you move through life. And I took to it very quickly. Spent a lot of time in high school in the art room. Wanted to be a doctor, and I think I spent too much time in the art room that I did not have the grades to be a doctor. But it started my passion for it. And then I went on to college where I took more um, uh, bare boned oil painting classes and learned a lot of techniques and how to create everything from scratch and do it all like they did back in the day.
Really? That's
Yeah.
cool. So
Yeah.
what kind of doctor did you want to be?
It's a good question. I don't know if I had a specific path in mind, which also probably hindered
Yeah.
any real legitimate future in it. But I remember sitting down one day and in Panera, and my mom so lovingly said, "You might want to explore a few other career paths." Maybe my math and science grades weren't what they needed to be to go
Yeah.
into medical school, which is totally fine. And it's funny that I've now landed in healthcare advertising because the world has a funny way of working out.
Yeah, so it kind of works out.
It does, but it's a funny thing to reflect on.
Were your parents, either one of your parents, doctors?
No, my dad's a banker,
Okay.
and my mom runs an ice skating rink.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
My dad wanted me to be a lawyer.
Okay.
And I was like, I just
Yeah.
want to shoot bands.
Yeah.
I just want to go with rock bands. He goes, well, you can be an entertainment lawyer. So then you can work with
Huh?
the bands. Like, nah, I don't. Because I was like you, my math and science grades, I think I
Yeah.
took the same math class 3 or 4 times.
Yep.
I took it twice. I took part like an algebra 2 trig in high school, failed the trig part, had to retake it before I graduated.
Hmm.
Then I went to college and I'm pretty sure I took the same class again, failed it, and then had to take it over again.
Totally. That's why when I went through all the majors that I could choose from, advertising was the only business major that didn't have to take calculus. So
Yeah.
I thought, okay, that sounds good to me.
Yep. I went in as a business major, saw you had to take stats,
Yeah.
immediately changed it to PR.
Nice.
And then they had a PR class and said, who, or an advertising class or something. It was like, who in here are advertising majors or marketing majors? And all these people raised their hand, like, what do you want to do? I want to work at an ad agency. I want to own my own ad agency. Who's a PR major? Like 3, 4 of us raised our hands. What do you guys want to do? Nobody had a clue. I was PR because my dad had a degree in PR. And I thought, well, that doesn't sound so bad. So then I
Totally.
changed it to media advertising and went on
Nice.
with that. But
Yeah.
so what do you like to paint?
A lot of my work is rooted in activism, specifically gender rights, disability rights, and sexual assault awareness and survival. So a lot of my work stems from those types of spaces, and I work with a lot of people. I love people. I think people are fascinating. I love portraiture work, and so I work with a lot of people, talk to them, hear their stories, capture a message that they wanna relay, or maybe try and hone in on some of the quieter, uh, beautiful aspects of their story. Um, and that's usually what sparks me and where I start. And then where I end up is always a very different place than where I started. But a lot of my work comes from topics in those spaces.
All right. Are they portrait paintings or is it just kind of like they tell you your story and then you just go with whatever your imagination?
A lot of them are portraits that utilize a lot of different mixed media. Oil paint's my true love, but I've done a lot of exploration with materials in the last few years. Sometimes they turn into very abstract type paintings as well, but they always start with some type of portraiture element.
Is there somewhere you can see these?
Uh, there is, yeah, I do have a site. I do have a website. I do have some of my work on there. And yeah, I could share it with you.
Okay. Do you want to tell me now or you just want to tell me later?
Yeah, sure. It's AshleyClaireEpping.com.
So is it Clair or RE or?
CLAIRE.
So you went to college and you majored in advertising
Yep.
and you were still painting in college.
Yep. I still
Was
fine
your
art.
goal to get out of college and go into advertising or to just get out of college and be a painter?
It's a great question. No, I think at the time I did not. I studied fine art as well, but I did not have the courage to bank on myself as a full-time creative. So I spent a lot of years in roles that circled creatives, but wasn't actually the one creating. I don't think I was ready to take the bet on myself yet. So I spent a lot of years doing very random things. I worked in art galleries for a long time. I worked in athletic marketing. I, for a few years, was an agent of a very prominent artist at a very big gallery in New York City, like very random roles in which I touched creativity, but I wasn't the one actually creating.
Right.
And so I guess my goal in college was, it's a good question. I don't even know what my goal was until my senior year of college, where my professor came over to me and I was taking a final, and he whispered, do you want to work at the Clios? And I said, I didn't know what the Clios were at the time. And I said, of course I do, because I just trusted him. I said, yeah, sure. So I left the final and Googled the Clios, and quickly realized they're the most prominent advertising award show out there. And so that kind of started a path of me just wanting to do a good job, and me wanting to surround myself with cool people. And I think the rest happened later on.
So was that your first job out of college?
It was. Yep.
All right.
I started there as an intern. And over the course of 4 years, worked my way to program director of the Clio show. So I started as an intern, and in my entire purpose there was to vet and watch all of the entries that came in. So I spent hundreds of hours watching, reading through strategy insights, and going through ads. It was a dream job. I went in every day with a coffee and a snack, and I sat there for 8 hours with my headphones and just watched all the ads that were entered. So it was college was great, but this was the best masterclass I could have ever gotten in modern day advertising.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
So what do you think made your professor ask you if you wanted to go work at the Clios, as opposed to like just anybody? Had you guys talked about something like that before? And he was just like, you know what, this Clio job would be cool for her. I think it would work out great.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, though I didn't do great in my math classes, I did do pretty well in my ad classes and in those creative projects. So I think he and I, had a relationship and knew each other, and we worked on some projects together already. So he trusted that I would be a good representative for the university at the time. And it turned into, a much bigger thing that changed the course of my career. But at the time, it was supposed to be a 6-month internship, and he sent me.
Was it a paid thing or unpaid?
It was paid. Yep.
Oh, even better.
Yeah, it was totally legitimate. It was awesome. I felt part of the team. So, and that's probably why I ended up staying for another 4 years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
God, my advertising was awful. I had one like real advertising class.
Yeah.
And I think we spent at least a third of it watching Crazy People, the movie about Dudley Moore, who gets put into an insane asylum from working at an ad agency and then comes up with all these ads. Have you seen it? Have you heard about it?
I've heard about it. I have not seen it.
It's really funny. But I mean, we spent at least 3-4 classes just watching that. I'm like, really? I mean, so you got a much better education, it sounds like, than I did when it came to advertising, for sure.
Yeah, it did start pretty good.
So when you're at the Clios, what exactly was, so you sat there and you put on headphones and you watched everything. How does that actually work? So if, say, I'm at an ad agency, I'm a creative director, we just do some great ad that we think is wonderful and worthy of an award. What happens? How does it come to you? Do they send like a brief with it? Do they just send, here it is, hope you like it, hope you figure out what it's about? I mean, how does all that work?
Yeah, they usually send us the actual content that goes out to the public. They a lot of times create a case study video that gives you some behind the scenes information about the creation of the work. And then sometimes they'll send you decks like you're talking that give you some of the brief information and strategy.
Okay. So you had how many did you have to go through on average?
Thousands. I went through hundreds a day.
Wow.
So it was and you know, I'm getting the behind the scenes look of everything because this is not all published to the public. When something wins, you get to see the film, but the entry contains a lot of information itself. So I was just learning. I was literally learning, soaking it in, and this was just the online process that I was going through. And then I eventually, over these years, ran and attended the judging sessions. So we would pick a different location around the world each year, and we would invite all of the jurors to come sit around a big table and talk about their opinions of the work and why something was working or wasn't, what they liked, what they didn't, if they thought it was original, creative. And these were people from all over the world. So you got opinions and voices from all over. And I got to sit there and learn and soak it in. And it was awesome. It was so incredible, but it did make me jealous once again. Like I want to be you. I want my work to be talked about. I want to be making the decisions on what is and is not good work. And so it sparked a little of that feeling again that I wanted to be the one in the creative role.
Well, I bet. So who narrows it down? So you're looking at these thousands and thousands of ads that are coming in. At that time, was that your responsibility to narrow down which ones get put in front of all the judges, the whole jury of people, or was it a combination of like, this is awful, this is wonderful, this is great, this is I'll throw it in just because I'm not sure? I mean, how did you know? Were the ones were just you just watching like this has got to go in there, and you send it to them, and those you're like not so much? Why'd you even bother?
Well, I didn't get to make any decisions, sadly, which is okay because, you know, who was I at the time? But I just made sure that they had all the right information. If they were missing the film that they entered, which funny enough does happen, I would be the one to reach out and say, hey, we need your film to judge. So I was just vetting and making sure that they all looked okay to go to judging. And then once they get to judging, it's the jurors on the jury that we curate that make those decisions, and each round narrow it down to the final winners.
So how many do they get from the start at the beginning? How many do you present to the jury?
I probably can't give you real numbers, but they go through a lot of work. It's definitely a big undertaking, but we do end with that in-person judging week, and that is even though they do a lot of work up front to get narrowed down to the top work, that week is so fulfilling because it's all of these CCOs from all over the world coming together to talk about creative. What more could you want? And so they all left every time feeling so inspired, and the work was worth it to put in to come to find the winners.
You know how you chose which CCOs were going to be on the jury?
Yeah, that was my job. That was a big role, and I did a lot of research, a lot of work into figuring out who should be on which jury. If somebody had a big background in radio, then they, that makes sense to be on the radio jury and whatnot. And each jury, it was a big puzzle. You wanted each jury to have different voices, different opinions, different worldviews. And so it was really fun putting it together, and then getting to see the final product of these 10 very different people sitting in a room together, kind of making magic. It was awesome.
So where were the different jurors from? I'm assuming every year it changes, but say just off the top of your head, can you give me a couple of different places they were from?
Yeah, we had people from, let's say, Wonderman Thompson, Argentina, Leo Burnett, in China. We had a lot of creatives from Brazil who came. Of course, people from North America, Canada, the US. We had people come from Mexico. I mean, truly everywhere
Wow.
that you can imagine, we had representation from. So we had encountered a lot of people. There were definitely people who left really great impressions and were just inspiring people to be around and listen to,
Yeah.
which again gave me a little insight into a world I could start to dive into. So they're all probably responsible for me wanting to get into an advertising agency, for better or for worse. So
Was there one that was, is there any one juror that you met that you like, or two or three or whatever, that really made an impression on you that you remember just thinking, wow, this is.
yeah, I really was captured with Debbie Van Devin. She's the global CCO of VML Y&R.
Wow.
She was so thoughtful, insightful, led the jury so wonderfully. Sandra Bold, who's now the CCO at Wunderman Thompson in the Netherlands. She's awesome. Just fresh, spunky ideas. We had Pablo Del Campo come, who changed the face of advertising in Argentina.
Wow.
Yeah, there were a few really, really uh, big time creatives that
Yeah.
definitely made an impression.
Was there any, out of all the ads you saw come through the Clios, can you give me two or three that still stick with you as being just amazing and really well done?
Yeah, definitely. Viva La Volva was a big one. That was super impactful. Uh, I'm going through if I can tell certain stories.
Right.
But Viva La Volva was great, and it was always interesting to see which jurors voted for which pieces of work.
Right.
Different ads speak to different types of people, and then you would have somebody in the room who saw the brilliance and who fought for it and who said, no, we can't, we have to award this, whatever they felt because of XYZ. And they would get the whole room to understand their point, and they would change the outcome of that piece. That was a great one. Sick Kids did so many campaigns in Canada that were just like heart stoppers, that were so smart and also changed behavior and saw a huge increase in donations. So that was impactful and very real work that had real outcomes. And there was one film that it truly was just a film, but it is called The Secret Life of Flowers. It was directed by Baz Luhrmann. It was for like an H&M collab. But it is this like 3-minute film. You can find it on YouTube. It is the score, the casting, the art direction, the storyline is so good. It's just good craft.
Wow.
That when I'm in a lull or I need something to pick me up, I always pull that one up.
Secret Life of Flowers.
Your Life of Flowers.
I would,
Yes,
yeah, just for
beautiful.
the title, I'd be like, eh.
Yeah, I know. And you know what? I think it won a silver, which is still, it's an incredible outcome, but just, I just appreciate the amount of work and the craft that went into it. And it always gives me a little inspiration when I need it.
I'm definitely gonna look it up
Yeah,
for
I do.
sure. Yeah, I mean, just to win a silver though at the Clios, I mean, yeah, it's not a gold, but still,
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
huge.
come on, that's to win anything. I think at the Clios with the amount of competition that you have, and
Totally.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, big deal.
So, at what point at Clio did you start thinking, you know what, it's time for me to get into doing what these people are doing? At
Yeah.
what point did you seriously think about it and be like, all right, it's time for me to move on?
Mm-hmm. Well, the Clios hired Tim Nudd, who at the time was the creative editor at Adweek, and they hired him to come and create a content site for Clio. So he came and he built Muse by Clio, which is still around today, and it is a creative editorial hub for creative coverage. So he came over, and this was built from the ground up. So little didn't have all of the resources. We were working it out as we went. And at one point, he mentioned we were in the office. This was before the pandemic, and he mentioned that he wanted to start a Q&A series on the site with people in the industry, but that it may be kind of boring just to run their headshot with their Q&A. How cool it would be if we could have customized graphics for these headshots and these people's stories. And I remember this so vividly. It was a split moment where I was like, am I going to raise my hand? And I said, Tim, if you want, I could take a stab at creating a graphic. And he had nothing to go on. I was a painter. Like, he really put a lot of trust into
Did he
me.
know you were a painter?
He did.
Okay.
But that was, work outside of my office life. So
Right.
he said, yeah, that would be great. So I went home and I literally got my paints out and I painted this graphic and digitized it. And the original graphics for Muse's Q&A series were actual paintings that we, worked in their headshots to. So that's where it started. And over the years, the pandemic happened and we had a little more time on our hands, and Tim wanted to build out these Q&A series to have like 5 or 6 series of Q&As. And so we built custom graphic lines for each series, one for entertainment, cannabis industry, music industry, so on and so forth.
So was it in general, so the graphics, was it for each industry or for each person, like for the industry, and then each person had a different graphic, or did that graphic go on for each person's headshot?
It was a group of graphics that lived
Okay.
with the same, let's say, brand identity for the series itself, and would switch out, kept the same identity, but maybe switched out different layouts and palettes.
Okay.
So everybody got a custom headshot, and so at this point we were putting out 1 or 2 Q&As a day, and so that's when I started honing in on my craft. It was the pandemic, so I said, hey, if I'm gonna do this, I need to lean in. And I spent a few months really digging deep on all of my software skills and figuring out, what tools were available to me to create truly digital work. So we built all these series, and it was awesome, and it grew into, I ended up piloting my own series with Free the Work as a partner, and did all the identity for that series. We built, Tim created a podcast that dove into old advertising stories, modern advertising stories, and I built the identity for that. So it I ended up, I turned into the art director of Muse by Clio,
Yeah,
which
wow.
was a very organic thing, but it was exactly the confidence that I needed to take the big jump and move into a full-time creative role.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of work.
It was, but it was so fun. And the pandemic, we had nothing to do.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
just sat there, all day with materials and whatnot, and just played. And that's when I really realized, oh my gosh, I really enjoy this. And therefore, this is what I should be doing, really.
So how did you move from that over to Bloc? Was it something where it just organically happened and just you were one day you're at Clio and the next thing you know, some kind of offer comes in or somebody says something, or did you actually actively go looking for a place to work?
Kind of happened organically again, and I just had good people that took some good chances on me, and I was picking up some momentum with the work I was doing at Muse, and a lot of my work was being put out in content, and had a lot of eyeballs on it. And so yeah, kind of the position kind of came organically, and they needed someone, and I was able to step in. And it was a very humbling experience. As much as I knew, I did not know it all. And it was awesome. It was scary. It is always hard to bet on yourself like that. And yeah, from there, I just ran with it.
So what was your so tell me, what was your first, so your art supervisor is your title, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was your first week like at Bloc? So going from Clio's to over to Bloc, totally opposite ends of this thing. What was your first week like there?
It was learning a lot of process. There is a lot of process that goes on within advertising, that is unique to the industry, and you just have to learn it. And that's how a lot of the work gets done. The creative stuff came very natural, and I was that was the very exciting part. But every client, every brand, you have work that just has to get done. It has to go out. They might be cogs in the wheel of your big ideas, and that's okay. But learning the process of what departments work together to actually produce the work, and how you need to work with them, was probably the biggest learning curve.
So what exactly is your, I guess, job description as art supervisor? What would say a normal week or month or whatever be for you?
Yeah, the title art supervisor is pretty specific to the health ad industry. It translates to the role that an art director would have. So every week I'm working on maybe smaller digital projects that I'm designing, working on bigger booth designs, and then working towards really big general creative concept campaigns, big ideas, big films, working in all the way from pharmaceuticals to the public health space. And that's something I love about it, is every day is so different. And there are different clients, different needs. But my role at the end of the day essentially is I'm the art director. I'm creating all the visuals, on set, working at all the shoots, and that's my role at the end of the day.
You kind of do everything from, say, graphics to photography to motion to whatever else needs to be, illustration, whatever. So you come up with, so a client will come to you with an idea, and you'll come up with like, hey, or you or your team or whoever, you guys will just be like, well, this should be this graphic with this. And then you start working on that. Or we need to do a photo shoot with this. And then you start working on that. Is that how that kind of works out?
Yep, totally. Yeah. I have a creative team that I work with, and we all own certain parts of the business, and yeah, kind of rolls very similar to how you're describing.
So if somebody needed a graphic thing, would you just start painting or doing digitizing, getting into Photoshop or whatever and start, making something to make it happen? Is that, would you do that? And then also say it's a photography or a motion thing. Is that something where you start looking for photographers, directors, and you go, this feels right for our concept here is, how's that work?
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm responsible for coming up with the ideas. I'm responsible for coming up with the visuals that are strong enough to get to the final client round that we're all approving, and that will be handed off then to a CGI team or photographer, and then from there I will oversee the art direction and the completion of that project.
Okay. So are you actually design, like actually sketching out, drawing, painting, whatever stuff that actually ends up being out there? Or is that something where you do it and you go, this is what we're thinking, and then the team goes, okay, so and so over here is going to be the one to actually do this and do the final of it?
Yeah, it depends. A lot of the times, if it's a big idea, you need a CGI team, or you
Mhm.
need, a film crew to come in. But there are other times we just created a booth, a pharmaceutical booth, in which I literally designed the wallpaper, the curtains,
Oh,
the
wow.
clothes, and all of my designed work and files were printed on these materials. So it does depend on the job itself, but yeah, you get a little taste of both. So it's fun
Very
to
cool.
walk into a massive booth with all of your design work in it. It's like I'm an art supervisor and got to play interior designer for a minute. So
Very
uh,
cool.
yeah, there's a lot of different jobs that come in.
So there's times where you see your work like out in the world and you're walking by or you looking through something and there it is. And you're like, hey, I had a hand in that whole thing right there.
Yep. Yep. It does happen. It does happen, and I'm early in my career, and it's going to happen even more
Yeah.
in the future. But yeah, I don't know if that feeling will ever go away. It's so exciting. You put a lot of hard work, a lot of
Mhm.
hours, a lot of, patience into work. And so to see it finally produced is a very satisfying feeling.
Oh yeah. I was having lunch with a friend of mine. He works at a health agency
Mm,
and he was talking about an ad that was just getting ready to come out. And they had worked on it like it was something that had taken them like 3 months, where it
yep.
should have normally taken like a year or something to put together, but they had to
Uh,
rush it through. And he's
mhm.
telling me about the commercial. He's like, it's like a long commercial because of whatever. And he was telling me all the little nuances of this commercial. Like this guy's doing this at the beginning, but at the end, he's doing this.
Mhm.
And when I saw it, I actually recognized those were the things that were happening because he had told me. But
Okay.
I was thinking, does everybody pick up on this?
Right.
Or is it like a subconscious thing where oh, well, this dude was, I don't know, I don't say hanging out looking like he was sick on the couch, but by the end he's, riding a bike or whatever it was.
Yeah.
How, are people catching that? And I'm assuming they are because they run this commercial nonstop.
True.
But he
True. Yeah.
was
He's
so
got the
into it and
digital
so
stuff.
loved it. And I was like, it's cool because when I see stuff I've done and it's out, then you're like, oh wow, I did that. That's very cool.
Yep.
The worst thing was I found out I had something in Times Square and I didn't find out till like 5 years after it had been there. I was like,
Oh,
seriously? Nobody
oh
wanted to
no.
tell me? It wasn't a huge thing, but it was in Times
Right.
Square. So
Yeah.
that was
Oh
a
my
little
gosh.
disappointing. But I was
Yeah.
thinking it's cool to see like the creatives on, the ad side, agency side, they still get excited about seeing their stuff out there and talking about it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we do a lot of work that is for HCPs. So we have to learn how to talk and communicate effectively the information that we need to get across to an HCP, a doctor who has gone through very different training and has a very different job and lifestyle.
Yeah.
So we work so closely with our medical team and our medical reviewers to make sure that everything is exactly what it needs to do, it needs to be, needs to say, and it looks the way it needs to look. You got to
Right.
communicate a lot more information when you're talking to doctors than when you're talking to patients.
Oh
So
yeah.
different
Yeah.
nuances. Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of legal that goes into
A lot of legal, a lot of legal. Yeah. So we got to get creative. But sometimes those boundaries are the best thing because you have to really think hard and be very strategic with, what you do and how you do it.
Yeah, I saw somebody talking about the 15-second ads and how, say you have 8 or 9 seconds of voiceover or whatever in the graphics, but then you have a few seconds of actual video and you got to find a way to make it not boring and make it exciting and funny
Right.
or whatever in those few seconds. And it's a lot of work and to come up with these
Yeah,
things.
it is.
In general, ballpark, how
Yeah.
long do most of these things that you are working on take from concept to actual execution? of it? Is it a short amount of time, or is it like, because I know sometimes in healthcare it can go 2, 3 years from the time they start talking about it to the time it's
Right.
actually out into the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say that's usually how it goes because it has to be.
Yeah.
You can't just push something into the world without all of the right systems in place. So
Mhm.
it's usually a long game. It's usually 2 or 3 year process. Sometimes you come into a project in the middle of it and it makes it go a little faster. But yeah, it's a long game until you see it out into the world sometimes. Um, but it makes it that much more satisfying because you spent so much time and labor making it perfect.
How often does it happen where, say, you get it together and then you either shoot it, design it, whatever, to the final, and then the client or whoever goes, you know what, we're changing this. So we're gonna have to hold off on that for a minute because we need it. Because I just did something last year and it was supposed to come out like 3 months later, 4 months later, whatever it was.
Yep.
And they decided to do an entire rebranding of the
Okay.
whole thing. They're still going to use what we did, but
Yep.
now it's the logo has changed, or the name has changed, or the graphics. All this stuff has changed on it because they want to rebrand it, even though they still want to use the same images, but it's a whole totally different kind of thing. Does that happen often with you guys?
Not as much in my experience, and it might just be the brands that I work on, but these brands are owned by bigger companies,
Mhm.
and sometimes they don't have such liberty to do that,
Yeah.
which may work in our favor of getting things pushed forward. But yeah, a lot of times, sometimes strategy changes. That's a big one. They get
Yeah.
new insight from doctors or research, and the strategy changes, and then therefore you have to go back and kind of adjust your work or storyline to fit the new narrative.
Right. Is there anything you can talk about that you've done? I guess either at Block or Clio's that I guess probably more Block as far as what you've actually worked on done that you were very excited about when you got it. You're like, this is very cool. This is going to be a great thing, great concept.
Yeah.
I'm excited to work on this.
Unfortunately, not at the Block yet. I can't talk about it, but I mean, there are a few projects that are going to be massively impactful and I don't say that in my account, but in general, to the medical world. They're going to be very fun and creative, and I will share them when they come out.
Okay.
But there was a project at the Clios that I worked on. We did this video for the 60th anniversary of the Clio Awards. And the idea of this film was to pay homage to all of the past creatives that have given such major contributions to the industry. So this film was an animated, illustrated video, but it was so different because usually you're working with celebrities or athletes, and of course you have to get them to buy into how they're being portrayed or what they're saying. But this was getting advertising people in front of the camera and getting them to approve how they were being portrayed and what messaging was going along with them.
Yeah, how was
And
that?
oh my gosh, it's a whole different ball game. Nobody gave us a massive issue, but it was so funny flipping the script on them
Mhm.
and having them be the ones that needed to approve how they were being portrayed and what was the storyline that we put forth. So it was really awesome. It wasn't just people. We also, because it was animated, we were able to include fictionalized characters that they created in ads. We had the most interesting man and
Oh wow.
Mr. Clean, and we were able to include all of these characters in this film as well. So it was a project that is like once in a lifetime. Probably will never do anything
Yeah.
like that again. But it was really fun, and kind of put them in the spotlight for a minute and made them make all of those decisions on how they wanted to approve themselves being portrayed.
Oh, that sounds very cool. Is that something
Yeah.
you can look up on YouTube?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
probably under like Clio Awards 60th anniversary.
All right. Okay, so totally off topic.
Mhm.
I saw on LinkedIn that you were a coach for the Special Olympics figure skating.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Okay, so not only are you a classically trained artist, but you can also figure skate.
Yep. I figure skate to this day every week. I
Really?
take lessons. I as long as I am able to do it, I will do it. But yeah, for 12, probably 12 years, I coached a Special Olympics figure skating team in Rochester that was the most fun hour each week of I look forward to it every week. So we spent, a few hours on the ice doing lessons, but we also created skating programs for everybody. So everybody got to pick whatever music they wanted, got to wear whatever they wanted. I had two athletes that I worked closely with. One who was had along with a few other things was visually impaired.
Oh, wow.
And so, that added another layer of teaching, because, it's easy to show somebody and
Right.
have them watch you what you're doing and emulate that. But we had to find different ways to learn new things together. And so it was a learning process for both of us. And we found all of these cool ways to be able to communicate and talk about what it was that we wanted to do, new tricks we wanted to learn. But you're on skates, you're on two sharp blades.
Wow.
It's not a place to be taking big risks and throwing your body into the air in different ways that you don't understand. So we wanted to make sure we worked together to make sure that we were both comfortable and understood these new things. And he went on to win a ton of medals and
Oh,
came
wow.
and was invited to skate in Bryant Park at Bank of America event with Johnny Weir. So he went on to do really cool things, and he's still skating
Amazing.
today. So sometimes I'll go back to Rochester and we bump into each other at the rink, and it's fun. But yeah, those were some of the best years.
When you go to the competitions, is it broken up into the different levels like that, or is it just everybody just goes out there?
Yeah, there are different levels.
Okay.
So that's a big goal, is to move up levels. The
Right.
more you skate, the better you get. So yeah, they all compete in their sector. They all win their award in their specific sector. And yeah, and it's a very big deal. And they do a few competitions a year. It's just like the Olympics. You start
Yeah.
locally, you move on to nationals, and then they have worlds.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think that would be great. I've done some things with this thing called Flashes of Hope, where you go into the kids' hospital and you shoot these kids who are there, and it's basically portraits for their families. But years ago, when I first started, I didn't first start, but I guess as I was moving slowly into shooting full time, as opposed to just shooting stuff on the side, we did a thing for, I was working at this place, and we did a thing for kids with Down syndrome, and they came in and basically had a makeover, and we shot them, and we spent a day doing that. That was the coolest, still probably the coolest day I've had shooting.
Yeah.
So I could, yeah, to be able to do that constantly, like week after week and year after year, I think that would be
Yeah.
amazing.
Oh, the best. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's so much fun. And it's hard to replicate an experience like that.
well, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question.
Okay.
In the advertising world, Clio, Bloc, anything advertising, what's the strangest, most unusual thing, or we can go do the coolest thing that's happened to you in this business since you graduated school and you started into the advertising world?
So part of my role at the Clios included client relations, which sounds boring, but actually entailed me traveling to over 10 countries to meet with our global clients. These clients are all CCOs of these big agencies. So there was this one trip, I was in Milan, and my business partner, who, we were taking all these meetings together, unexpectedly had to go back to the States. So I was there by myself, and we discussed it, and I said, I'm happy to take on, because we still had a week of meetings, and I said, I'm happy to take it on by myself. Not a problem. I was 24. And yeah, it scared me a little, but it was one of those split decisions. Again, I said, I have to do this. And so I said, yeah, I'll do it. She had to leave, and I did all these meetings. There was just one meeting specifically that I was a bit nervous about. And I was meeting with Bruno Bertelli, who is the global CCO of Publicis, and we were in Milan, and it's a big role. And so I was a little nervous. We were meeting for coffee and talked about our entries and judging and all of the usual things. So we're sitting there, and another person walks up, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, man, he looks so familiar, but I can't place him. And he looks at Bruno, he looks at me, and he says, I'm Dario. Dario. You could see I'm looking at him, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is Dario, the CMO of Bottega Veneta, who is a client of Publicis. I'm like, oh my gosh. So now I'm sitting here with Bruno and Dario. And he's like, oh, let me pull up a seat. So we're all sitting there chatting, and I'm, internally freaking out because these are two legends. But we had a great time. And that was probably one of the highlights of all of our travels, just being able to meet these people and talk to them. And, we're in the center of Italy, and it was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, I would think so. That sounds very cool. Okay. All right. I lied. I do have one other question. Sure. Since you've been to 10 countries with Clio, what's the coolest place you've been? Like, if you had to pick one spot to go back to just to hang out, where would you go?
If I had to pick one spot, I would probably say Bavaria, Germany. It was very quaint. It was felt very local. It was quiet. They had this beautiful lake. We rented a boat for like $10. Didn't need a boat license or anything. Just took it out. It was very relaxing. Really sweet town, really nice people. And I'm Italian, so I'm very partial to Italian food, but they had very, very good food as well. So I'd say if I tomorrow could get on a plane and go somewhere from my trips, it would probably be Bavaria.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll have to add that to the list of places I want to go. I have not been there yet. But
yeah.
Ashley, thank you so much. This was cool.
Thank you so much for having me on. And I was so looking forward to this conversation and just talking about all the different ways that we can get into this industry. And I really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. You did a wonderful job. Thank you.